Join me today in a live stream with Kneil Kameron, and he's sitting here next to me. You can see him there. Hello, Kneil.
Hi there.
And he lives down in the Los Angeles area.
hmm
And I'll just talk for a few minutes, give people a chance to sign on here, and then then I'll introduce Kneil a little bit more, and we'll let him talk for a bit. So, hello, Kurt. How are you? And Dolise, Margot, Sylvia, Nancy Creedmoor. Nancy, I think, lives kind of by Dolise. Frida from Napa. Oh, I'll have to go up there. I like Napa. Mary Inman. Francois. Hello, Francois. Fatima. Cindy, Dolise, Carla. Um, let's see. She's on the Mississippi. Renee. Teresa Brown, Amber Shiwi, David, Bonnie Davis, Scott. Hello, Scott. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Amber Shiwi, everybody. Hello. It's been a
hello.
while since I've live streamed. I did update my lighting a little bit. I think it looks a little bit better. I'm
Mhm.
still getting glare in my glasses. I got to work on that, but I'm improving as we go
Mhm.
along. Um, this is Kneil sitting next to me. Let's
Hi
see.
there.
That got to do the opposite. There's
Uh-huh.
Kneil. Okay. I met Kneil at Stitches SoCal.
hmm
And I was just walking around the showroom floor and I saw this young fellow in this gorgeous sweater that he happens to be wearing today. And
Yeah.
I knew immediately that he must have knitted it for himself. It was just so beautiful. And he was working in a booth that was selling lighting and some other things. And so I went up and started talking to him about the lighting. And
hmm
we just hit it off and really had a good time talking. We have a lot in common, our thoughts about knitting and stuff. And so,
hmm
and he also dyes yarn
I
and
do.
he's working on, starting a business outside of his work related
Yeah.
activities. And so I invited him to be on here because I think he's a new and upcoming young fiber artist that I think you would enjoy
Thank you.
meeting. So this is
Thank you so
Kneil.
much.
So
Thank you.
Kneil,
Thank you.
how
hmm
long have you been knitting?
Oh, about 8 years now. I think I checked my Ravelry page, and my first project was in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like, I started around like Christmas time of 2010. So um, I I started then, and I've kind of been learning and improving ever since.
Now on my screen, Kneil looks frozen. Is he frozen on your screen? Oh,
Oh, am
is
I?
can you see on YouTube? I'm not looking on YouTube. I'm just looking on my. Does anybody can see whether Kneil is frozen? I don't look frozen. Hopefully he doesn't look frozen too.
Let's see. I am a little bit freeze on my end too. Let me see if I can
So
adjust some stuff.
now you're good. Okay, so
Okay.
um, so he's been knitting just really a short time, but he's a pretty young fellow. So that might be a big chunk of his life, in relativity. If we look at it that way, he may have been knitting for like 25% of his life, maybe. I'm just guessing. Uh, um,
A
so
good
if you,
chunk.
as we go along, we can see your comments over here. Kneil can see them and I can see them. And if you have, people are saying yes.
Yes, I'm frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let me.
Yes, it's frozen. Yes, frozen. Suzanne, not. Okay, so we got to figure out why Kneil is frozen. Is he still frozen?
Hmm. Let's see. I work in IT too, so this is kind of where
Kurt
I
says
kind
frozen
of do my.
is fine. Keep talking. Okay, so we'll keep talking. So as we go along, I'm going
Oh,
to
now everything is.
questions.
1 second. I think I just have to take out some tasks on my end.
Now you're talking.
Okay.
You're doing good. Just let me
Okay.
know busy. That's
Wonderful. Wonderful.
a big deal. If you want to
hmm
ask Kneil direct questions, you can do that over in the chat. If you want to ask a question, put the word question in all caps before your question. That makes it easier for me to find. Okay?
hmm
So, you've been knitting just a short while, actually a long time compared to your life. And what drew you to knitting to begin with?
So the first time I interacted with fiber arts was my mom bought a toy knitting crank for my sister for Christmas, and I had asked her, "Oh, could you please knit me a Harry Potter scarf?" Because at the time Harry Potter was giant, and it still is, and I really wanted like that iconic like red and gold scarf. And my sister tried a couple times, and this crank, because it was a toy, it kept dropping all the stitches and falling apart. And so after a couple moments, she was just like, "Okay, I'm done with it." And I was like, "Wait, but I still want that scarf." So what I did is like I kind of took over that knitting crank and like kept going for like a good couple, like a month or a couple weeks. And to the point where my family was kind of making little jabs of like hearing the knitting crank go through the night as I was trying to make it work. So, and then at one point I was like, okay, I've invested so much time into this crank. I might as well just learn how to do the real thing. And that's what started my journey. I just figured I bought some yarn, I bought some bamboo knitting needles, and from then it's been a lot of like YouTube videos, most of which have been yours, Suzanne, and kind of just pushing myself and learning the skills. And it's really, kind of, there's an idea in my head, and what I love about knitting is that you can apply what you know and create something with it. And that's, I don't know, something that's kind of addicting for me.
Right. So you also are musically inclined,
I
and
am.
you work in an IT department. So your brain is the perfect brain for knitting.
Yes.
You know,
Um, yeah.
it's
When, oh,
math and creativity together. The
yeah.
logic and the creativity are kind of like you use both sides of your brain equally. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I do too. Sometimes the logic overrules the creativity. I'm jealous of people who are more creative. So,
Hmm.
um, so when we met at Stitches, and I walked up and I was talking to you, and I said, "Well, I was looking for a light," and we were kind of talking about the light, and I told you I made YouTube videos, and then you realized that, and I said, "My name's Suzanne Bryan. I have a YouTube channel," and you were going, "Oh my God!"
Like,
That was really kind of fun for me. So
oh, good, good. I will be honest, I was a little like starstruck for a moment. I'm like, okay, what do I say next?
so one of the things that you and I talked about before this, when we were talking about what the list of things to talk about, was
Mhm.
talking about how knitting relates in your life and
Mm.
how what it does for you.
Yeah, so I find it to be very balancing, very meditative. It's my work can get pretty stressful. There's one point, like my first day on the job, I was preventing a hacking attempt from China, from this Chinese IP address, and like after everything had gone, I was just like, there was just kind of like stress on my chest, and I just started like knitting out a couple rows, and this is kind of where knitting helps balance me. It's just you kind of get into like this primal mind of like, okay, the next stitch and the next row, and being able to feel that progress one stitch at a time, just it has like this quality to it that I can't ascertain or speak to specifically, but it's this healing to it, and I find it really helpful.
We were talking when we were getting ready for this, and when people smoked a lot, when there were a lot of people smoking at work, people who smoked would take smoke breaks. I really
Okay.
think that knitters ought to be able to take knit breaks.
Knitting. Right.
Have like 15 minutes, you can knit a couple of rows, calm down,
Yeah.
and then go back to work. So we
Yeah.
should start that. That should be a new trend,
I
you know.
I'm down for that movement. I could do that. I mean,
Knitting breaks. Okay,
yeah.
so then another thing I liked what when your list of things was the value of a swatch.
Oh yes. So, uh, swatching saves lives. That's what I like to say because, and it. I say that because at the beginning, like when it was hard for me to afford yarn, like every inch of yarn was just this valuable kind of gold thing that I don't want to waste. So it took me a little bit to learn like that swatching actually saves you time and saves you yarn because you can kind of map out how you think the yarn will interact with your tension and your needles and how everything kind of collects together. So I find it as like swatching is play with your yarn. You get to kind of get to know your yarn a little bit and see like what the quirks are. You know, maybe the needles you were using to begin with make you knit too tight or too loose. And it's just this kind of beautiful thing. What I do with swatches now is like I swatch it out and then I like to use it to patch like my regular clothes. And it's like a nice way to play with that too. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I recently took up sashiko like embroidery. So I do kind of like I knit out a swatch to get an idea of what it looks like, and then I like sashiko on top of it to kind of meld the design with the rest of the cloth. And that's kind of fun to do. Yeah, I brought an example of it, and I can show that later. So
right, he has a bunch of knitting to show us that we'll look at in a little bit. Now, swatching too, to me, is like a prelude of things to come. So I can carry it around with me, and I usually swatch for my next project while I'm working on the previous project. So I don't have that time lapse in between projects where I have to swatch. So I'll swatch, and then I carry it around with me. And all my friends know this because I get my swatches out all the time. I'm feeling them and looking at them and manipulating them and thinking about the next project. So swatching used to be a bad term. It should not be a bad term. It's a wonderful term. It's like when you're cooking and you taste the cooking before it's ready. You know, when you're doing little taste tests, that's swatching like that. That's how I think about it.
When I bake, I like to do like small batches of baking too to kind of get a feel of the whole thing. So it's kind of like that.
So now let's take a look at some of your knitting. What have some of your swatches turned into?
Oh yes. So something I kind of want to show up is like sweaters, or at least the growth of my sweaters. Let me pull out. Actually, the first thing I'll show you is this Matthew Shepard scarf that I'm pretty proud of. It was the first time I ever dyed yarn and kind of knitted in with lace. So I'll be right back and I'll go grab that.
Okay. So people are saying that my volume is not very high, so I need to work on that and figure out how to increase my volume.
I can lower my volume if that helps you.
Do you want to try that a little bit? On my end, it sounds fine, but everybody's saying that I'm quiet, that you're okay, but I'm quiet. So let me see my speaker.
Because if we're equalized, at least they can raise the volume up with both on. How about now?
How does that sound? It takes them a couple minutes before we see what they say.
Gotcha.
So let's see. Well, we need to talk so they can tell. So
okay.
Oh, Sue says dyeing is cool. We're going to talk about dyeing in a minute, Sue. Okay, so
it is very cool, though, yes. Sue. I love it.
Okay, let's go ahead and show what you have to see.
Okay. So so this is one of the bigger projects that I ever took, and it involved a lot of kind of techniques that I watched a lot of Suzanne videos on. So the first one, so this is the Matthew Shepard scarf, and
beautiful.
And this is the part that I dyed myself.
And
this,
cool.
Yeah, and then
did you dye that before you knitted it?
I did dye it before I knitted it. So I knitted it up as a blank and then got the color gradient, and then I unraveled everything and knitted it together. Another thing that I really liked about this was that I took the cast off row and kind of used it as a little kind of echo out to
a flare.
Yeah. A flare. There we go.
Yeah.
To kind of. Yeah. So what I love about this is it taught me how to seam things together. The provisional cast on.
Yes.
Yes, to
Yes.
seam in pattern and to like, yeah, get everything together. And this is where I really learned like tension and knitting at the end, the tips of the needle. It's like the seed stitch border is like super important to get all in the right tension. So
Yes.
I was like,
Gorgeous.
thank you, thank you. What else do I have to show? I have some. Let me pull out some of the sweaters that I have.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Bluetooth network sound.
So this is the first sweater that I ever knitted, and it was made with some acrylic yarn that I got on sale. And um, what I did, this is kind of like a different technique of, give me one second, I'm getting some echo back, so here we go. So this part is the first time I ever dyed with multiple colors, and I thought it would dye out to look like this
Uh-huh.
one,
Uh-huh.
but that didn't quite turn out. I was halfway through, I'm like, wait a minute, these are stripes. Why are they stripes? And so I turned that into kind of the edge of the
Oh, that's cute.
sweater.
Cute.
Yeah, and then I have like the leftover from that scarf into the collar here. This one taught me a lot about sizing. I've always been afraid of making something that's sized,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where swatches come into handy because then I know how many inches per stitch I have, and that kind of taught me a lot. But there are a couple kind of errors here, but I love seeing that now because it shows me my growth. Like this is where I was, and this was the best I could do at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I move forward. The next sweater I have is
Hold
one
on,
that I
we're
was.
getting some very
Oh,
positive comments over here.
oh,
Let's see, Teresa Brown says the scarf is drop dead gorgeous.
thank you
And,
very much.
I increased my volume on my microphone, so hopefully you can hear me better. Um, Also, Neil, Dolise asked, what is your Ravelry name? That's something I did not get from you.
Oh, that it's KnittedKneil.
Okay.
So I
Just like a,
tried to keep everything the same,
yeah.
and I try to keep whenever I have a project on Ravelry, I try to be really good about my notes, like what needles I'm using, how I changed it, so to help replicate it for anyone who wants to do the same thing that I did.
Right. Dolise, who asked that question, she has
Uh-huh.
fantastic notes on her projects on Ravelry as well. Her name is Art Lady. So if you ever uh, see her on Ravelry, you can her notes are amazing for her projects.
I love that. Yes, thank you. We
Okay.
will probably have a conversation later.
Okay, let's see what's next. Do you have another thing to share? I know you have
Yeah, so
one more sweater.
I do, I do. So this is this is a sweater that this was the first time I started knitting a sweater for someone else.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't quite get the measurements right. So what ended up happening is that it's this large, one second, cord. Okay, it's this large kind of stockinette sweater, but I wanted to size it so that the bottom would give more ease,
Uh-huh.
but I ended up making like an A-line dress by accident. And as I was trying it on, I'm like, something's not right.
So now you need to find somebody that it will fit. That's when you gift it, you know.
Right. Yeah, so that one is like I'm thinking because I knitted that quite a while ago, I'm thinking of like breaking it down, reusing the yarn and kind of making a 2.0. But
In my local group here, we do that at the as the end of the year comes around, like December and then January. Our first guild meeting every year is we bring all of those projects that we haven't finished that have been sitting over in the corner and putting guilt trips on you. Like, you have to
uh-huh.
finish me before you can buy new yarn. You don't want to finish it. It's like you're done with it. We
Uh-huh.
bring those to the guild meeting and we rip them out and
Ooh, yeah.
reskein the yarn. And when then we know
Oh,
how to repurpose the yarn, we wet it,
uh-huh.
reblock the yarn and
Hmm.
skein it back up again. So that's what's
There's
going to
this,
happen to that sweater.
yes, there's this thing that I've been wanting to start called like hashtag Frog It Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Like every Friday, like if you have some like projects that are just sitting there, just frog it out. And I was thinking of doing like a live stream of just frogging everything out and blocking it out and talking about why.
That could be addicting. You know, it's kind of it's a cleansing thing when you're
Hmm.
ripping it out. Just like
Yeah.
it's good for you, ripping out is good for you too. Because what other things in your life can
Mhm.
you rip out like they never happened?
Right.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
nice?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the beauty of reuse too, because like your experiences or energy that you can use as tools moving forward. You know, how can I usually ask myself, how can I love better? And that's kind of where my head goes when I go there.
That's very cool.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. You also mentioned the difference between artisanal and good enough.
Yes. So my thoughts on that is just it's always pushing yourself to be better. Like the idea, like this sweater of mine. So this is like the final sweater, and part of like my idea of these three is that each sweater taught me what I needed to know to make this sweater here, which is like this circle yoke. And even this sweater started out as a mistake. And I was trying to do like a traditional Fair Isle, like an Icelandic sweater, and I found out the red was too variegated. And so I was like, so from that point, I think it was a bottom up sweater. So I got to about this point here, and I was like, I have to change it. And from there, I just decided I can design it myself. And
Ah,
that's,
amazing.
yeah, and that's kind of where I'm thinking about like that point of like good enough and artisanal. Because if I were to just think, oh, this is good enough, I'm just going to follow the same pattern and go move forward.
Uh-huh.
But you can always just, push yourself a little bit and go like, no, it's not what I want. Let me find what I want.
Instead of
Yeah.
pushing yourself forward in an uncomfortable direction, you just
Hmm.
switch directions a little bit and then
Yeah.
continue going forward. Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Nina says, what a beautiful yoke. And
Oh, thank you.
Cisnero says, love the sweater that he's wearing. Isn't that? And Judy says, you seem fearless. Some of us are not that way and have our feet in cement.
Oh, I think it just takes practice. Start small. And every time, well, what I find is like mistakes, you can always fall forward with a mistake. It can become a design attribute that is just something that only you can do, or it can teach you for the next project. And that's what these sweaters taught me.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that's how I knit too, because I've knit many, many, many sweaters. But when I go to choose another sweater to knit, whether it's my design or someone else's, it's always
Hmm.
got to have something that's new for me, that
Hmm.
I'm trying new and experimenting with. And example, this sweater I'm knitting for my daughter is actually from a pattern, but
Hmm.
knitting it and I'm seeing what she's done with the brioche and placing the increases and decreases. I'm thinking that's really good. I like that. You know, I may use that in the future in a future project. So I'm
Hmm.
learning that.
Yeah.
And even though I'm a very good knitter, I'm always pushing myself forward to learn
Hmm.
something new, new, new. So
Yeah.
let's go down a little bit more. Um, Speaking of bettering yourself, you
Mhm.
said you might be interested in the Master Hand Knitting program.
Yes, I so because of all like you're pretty consistent by the way you introduce yourself with your YouTube, and you always mention that TKGA like Master Hand Knitting program, and I'm like, gosh, that sounds like a great idea.
It is what I liked about it because, as you're finding with knitting, when you just jump in, it's like there's a whole ocean out there of information. And
Mhm.
where do you start? And then where do you go from there? And so in the beginning, it's kind of like hit and miss where you're going and what you're learning. And it's
Mhm.
not in any particularly constructed manner. The
Mhm.
Master Hand Knitting program starts you at the beginning,
Mhm.
and the very beginning of it may seem a little tedious until you really understand that you're finessing your own knitting, and you can jump in as deep or as shallow as you want. So
Mm-hmm.
there are master knitters who did shallow, and there are
Mm-hmm.
master knitters who did deep. I jumped in all the way to the bottom of the pool when I first got in, and I tried to learn as much as I possibly could because it was a gift to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's in a constructed manner. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time you finish it, you have a very wide and deep knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of knitting. And it truly
Yeah.
is a gift to yourself. It is
Mm-hmm.
not for everybody. Not everybody wants to do that, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that you would do very well with it. I think that you would like
Oh,
it.
thank you.
It would be
Thank
very
you.
rewarding to yourself.
Mhm. Well, it's just so what's drawing me to it is when I'm watching you, it's almost as if you're fluent with the language. And I can, like, for me, I feel like I'm getting better, but it's still kind of conversational. And like there are moments when you're doing, like, I think you're talking about the garter stitch and different ways to like do the garter tab on a crescent shawl. And
Uh-huh.
you're like, you could do it this way or this way. And if you're continental or English, and it's just like, wow, she is literate. And I love that.
Yeah, well, I like learning to do all
Mhm,
of that too. And
mhm.
it is very rewarding to me when people like you say things like that. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
So Margot Shin says, what is the name of the other program aside from in Master Hand Knitting? It's the Knitting Guild Association. I'll put a link to it in the video description later on.
Mhm,
The Knitting Guild Association Master Hand Knitting course. They have many other educational courses, but that is the one that I went through, and I really liked it.
mhm.
So Scott said something. Oh yeah, Scott said, "Hooray for the Master Hand Knitting program." Scott is in level 3. I have quite a few
Oh.
people who are going through the Master Hand Knitting program and master knitters who actually watch this. So
Mhm,
Renee says the other program they just started that's new is called the Professional Knitter Certification, and it's for people that don't want to have an in-depth knowledge of knitting, but they want to knit better.
mm,
Difference is the professional knitter course is for people that want to like knit for designers, like they want to be test knitters, or they just want to knit better.
mhm,
But the master hand knitting
mhm,
program is for people that maybe want to design or write
mhm.
articles about knitting. I've written a lot of articles about knitting, so that you not
Yeah.
just have the knitting this part, but you have the knowledge about
Mhm.
the knitting. Then
Yeah.
that's the part that I really liked. And it depends on your personality. I like research. Not everybody likes research, but I was in the medical field, and you just research constantly. That's all you do, and it was second nature to me to do the research. If you don't
Mhm,
like doing research, the professional knitting course is better. But I think that
mhm.
you would like the master hand knitting program because you want the whole
Yeah.
ball of wax.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's funny because a couple weeks ago I was researching mosaic knitting,
Uh
and I'm like, oh, look, there's this really great article. Wow, this is really well written. And guess what? It was the one that you wrote. I'm like, oh.
So people have this. Here's a question from Sue M. I'm going to drag it over here so people can see it. It says, does Neil prefer sweaters best, and what is on your needles right now?
Ooh, let's see. Do I like sweaters best? Well, I started with scarves, mostly because I was afraid of like sized garments. But recently, my thoughts are a little bit more on sweaters because I want to play a little bit more. But what's on my needles right now? I can show you a couple things.
Yes.
Right now, let's see. There's two that come to mind. I'm trying to do this like Japanese oriented kind of knitting patterns, and I want to kind of make a collection of them.
Uh-huh.
So the first one I'll show you is this Fair Isle that I've been working in, and that's my dog.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So this first one was inspired by a sashiko design that I've seen, and it's this one here.
Oh, wow. And are you
So
doing that in the round or flat?
it's in the round because
Around.
I
Very
wanted to kind of
gorgeous.
like, yeah. And so this is kind of my idea, the swatch.
Exactly.
And
That's how big of swatches that I make, because that's how you find out the fabric. You cannot feel a fabric from a little itty bitty swatch.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this is with yarn that I've dyed, and it was a nice way to kind of see like how the depth goes into it. And um, I, whenever I do like Fair Isle, I like to show off the back end too.
Let's see.
So these are my floats.
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Scott said it's gorgeous. If Scott says it's gorgeous, it's gorgeous.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. So this is done with merino wool. But the next one I'm working on is the larger project, and let me show it to you first, and then I'll talk about the fiber content.
Okay.
So this next one is actually one of the larger kind of projects that I've been working on. It's kind of my opus in a way when it comes to this project. But this is a duffel bag that I'm creating.
Oh,
And
wow.
using like this kind
Nice.
of wave pattern in the back that I've been playing with.
Yeah.
And it's like showing up all over the place. But the thing about this is
How you did it different. That's gorgeous.
yeah, so that way when you're
Beautiful.
opening up the zipper, and so I learned how to seam a zipper, which was a task. And so
Very nice.
yeah, so I
Wow.
steeped the middle and like reinforced it, and then I had the zipper in there as well. And I crocheted the ends here, so I'm merging crochet and knitting into this project because I wanted the structure of
I'm going to
crochet.
put you whole screen so people can see this better. There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is like I'm still working on getting a good strap, like a strong strap that doesn't stretch, and I've been playing with ideas for that.
Thought about felting?
Well, so this project specifically, I'm using all acrylic yarn because I wanted to show that, you know, every fiber matters.
Right.
And like you can use, if you apply the right skills, you
Whoops.
anything can do it. So I steek some Fair Isle with acrylic, which I've heard is quite hard to do, and I can attest to that.
But you
because
did
it doesn't ever. I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I learned how to use a sewing machine for the first time, and then I sewed the inside so I can pick up the stitches and go around it, and that's kind of where I've gone with here. Felting might be, maybe for the straps I can felt out, but I kind of wanted to make this an all acrylic project just to show off that, like, you know, this is Red Heart yarn, so this is like something out of, you know, what is actually using some of the yarn that I first bought when I was a new knitter because it was the cheapest and it had the biggest amount of yarn. And it's important to me that like it's accessible. Like even if you get this yarn, you can make these gorgeous things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm going to try to make this screen split again here.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what we have here. And let's see other things that are on my needles. I want to say that I'm a monogamous knitter as much as I can be, but sometimes like I want to like knit as fast as I think. And so I have like a couple little projects that I just play with to kind of get my ideas out. So there's a couple socks that I'm working on, and I'll pull those out.
Okay. So Sue M. and Deborah Cisneros have both suggested that you could do a tablet weaving strap for that bag.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, that would make a really strong strap.
Yeah. Ooh, I might look into that. I've never weaved before, but when has that ever stopped me? So
Exactly. new skill, a new craft.
Right,
Let's see what you got
right.
next.
Yeah. And so, okay, first thing I'm doing is like designing this sock here. I wish I could get more resolution, but these are like lots of tiny little cables put together
Oh, yes.
on like,
Great.
yeah. And then the next one, I might need to run to the next room really quickly because I forgot to put it on my couch.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
So I'm going to talk while you're running around. So let's see. Someone asked if the Master Hand Knitting Program and the Eva Mattis asked if the Master Hand Knitting Program and the professional knitting programs were available in Europe, and yes, they are. Just go to tkga.org. It's not .com, it's .org, and you can see more about these programs. They're available worldwide. Okay, you're back.
Okay. I'm back. So, okay, the next one is just playing with Fair Isle. This one is I was following a pattern and I'm kind of tweaking it as I go, but this one here, like echoes of, I forget. Yeah, so it's this nice Fair Isle. It's a corrugated rib on the top. And then it's like these lots of little tiny single stitch motifs here that are fun. And then my addition to it is
Peries. Those are called Peries. When you have small designs that divide the bigger designs, they're called Peries.
Peries. Thank you for that. The next thing I'm doing is one that isn't in the pattern is doing like a 2-color rib.
Oh, I love that.
A 2-color cable here. Yeah. And that one's been really fun to play with and figuring out how to get everything to move smoothly and getting like a nice transition.
Inside.
Oh, yes. Yes. My favorite part. So the inside is like
very
this.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and I really
good too.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice. Okay, so let's see. Taking the chance on new blood. We talked about that. Let's talk a little bit about being inclusive in the knitting community.
Yes. I mean, as an Asian knitter, as a gay man, that's kind of something that I think about a lot. And knitting wool people are warm people to me, and like yarn, like merino yarn, like every piece can offer you something, and there are things about each yarn that only that yarn can provide. And I think that's a really great allegory into what the community to me is as a whole. It's a big warm house where everyone is welcome and you can kind of pull from the experiences and like the love of everybody else. And so
sharing.
Including
and sharing. Yes. Not being exclusive, not being exclusive of holding back the information or being exclusive of being a clique or subset of people. You know, it's all of us together. And when we were talking on the phone, one of the things that came to my mind was, and you were talking about the fiber, but let's say you're blending fibers and you have some alpaca and you have some linen and you have some wool. They all have different characteristics of their own. Like if you had 100% linen, it has no stretch, but it's very soft after it's been washed many times. It's kind of crisp in the beginning. Alpaca is very, very soft, but again, it has no recoil or stretch. Wool has the recoil and the stretch. So when you put all of these fibers together, each one lends its best qualities to the whole. That's how I feel about people in general, and especially. And knitting is an art form, and I think it should be above everything else because it's coming from your soul. It's coming from inside. Yeah.
I mean, because the thing is, like, when you knit these pieces, I mean, all of these take time, and I don't know, I feel like everything I knit, I give a little bit of myself into it. Like, I give a little bit of my love, a little bit of my ideas, and so I am always a little bit nervous, like, sharing them because, like, this is parts of me, and sharing that to me is just, this is where kind of the beauty you can find is like when everybody shares with each other. I had an experience earlier where, you know, someone was using like Malabrigo, which is a yarn from Uruguay, and then using like a Japanese pattern for a garment that was from another place. And it's just this melding of everything is just, you know, it creates this beauty that is singular and specific, and I love that.
And it's similar. That is part of the art, the craft, the art, because it's just like in oil painting. These people who are famous oil painters, Rembrandt and Van Gogh and all these people, they learned the basics first, just like everybody else. But they could build on that and express themselves, and based upon the common knowledge. And that's the way knitting is too. For example, the sweater you're wearing right there. You started out with the basic skills of the stranded knitting and the foundation knowledge, but then you built upon it and expressed yourself. And so you have this work of art. It's
yeah.
So
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I call it the this one I call the red herring sweater.
Let's talk
you want to see the back?
Yarn a little bit. Your yarn.
Oh, my yarn. My yarn. Ooh, okay. Let me go grab that. So I have a couple gradient schemes that I'd like to share with you, and let me start off with those.
Okay.
So the first one I want to share, when I dye these gradients, I like to kind of pull from experiences that I, you know, places that inspire me or colors that I see that kind of catch me. So the first one I have, I'm calling Monterey. It's inspired by the kelp forests in Monterey Bay, and so it's this like nice gradient yarn. This is a single skein that's like knitted into this giant blank. I put a lot of like drop stitches to kind of make it kelpy. Yes. So it starts off on like at the bottom of the stock, which is like this brown, and then the brown transitions, gets warmer, and it turns into like this kind of mustard color. I saw like the kelp stalks were like this yellowish color, and then I go like to represent like the leaves, I go a little bit more into the greens, and then as the leaves kind of go up toward the water, it becomes more vibrant, and then you end up like with the leaves like kind of touching.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
With this, when you knit with this like yeah, and so whenever I design it, I kind of want to think of the journey you're on when you're like knitting with this yarn. The next one I have is called Cozumel, and that was probably one of like the first ones that I kind of came up with a concept. So let me go over that one.
Okay. Hello, Kathy. I haven't seen you on here for a while. It's nice to see you.
Let's see. I see Eva is asking what yarn is my sweater. This is the red is Malabrigo in Vulcan, Malabrigo Rios in Vulcan, and then the green is an alpaca. So it's this part is very warm and soft, just because I put my hand to my chest a lot, and I like that it's nice.
So Zahava has a question, but she hasn't typed it yet. She just says the word
question.
Yeah.
As she's typing that out, I'll show you a little bit of Cozumel. This one is one that when I was on the trip in Cancun, we went to the island of Cozumel, and I was just very struck by how the water transitioned as I was on the boat docking onto the bay. So it starts off with this really like rich blue. And then the blue gets brighter as you get closer to the island, and it becomes like more teal. Then specifically about Cozumel, there's like this bright green color that I haven't seen anywhere else. And then we go into like a whitish color for the crests of the waves, and it sits on this nice kind of beige color in the end, which it's trying to see if that's
I can see it a little bit. Yep.
Yeah. And
that's
so
beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Mary Brandow came on a little bit late, and she missed the beginning where we talked about how we met ourselves And she says, your conversation is lovely. I was a bit late in joining the discussion. How did you and Kneil meet? Would you recap before you sign off? So you tell it this time.
Okay. So when I met Suzanne Bryan, first I have to preface, I was working with Artisan Space at Stitches SoCal. Joanne Brownson, Shannon, and Jason Mullet Browsby gave me a chance of being able to debut my yarn for the first time. So this is the first time everyone's ever seen anything that's come out of my head. And part of that was like working with the booth and being able to talk to everybody. So throughout the day, I'm like, oh, welcome to the booth, like welcome to Artisan Space. Look at all these cool stuff. My yarn is so awesome. Well, I hope so. And then one day, like, you know, Suzanne comes along and she's looking at the lamp and I'm like, okay, I get to show off this lamp. So I'm talking about the lamp. And as I look up, I'm like, why does she look so familiar? And so I remember specifically I was making the lamp go down and then I saw your like your name card. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Then you said, hi, I'm Suzanne. And I'm like, like, you're Suzanne Bryan. Oh my God.
Well, the light's perfect. I love the light.
Oh, thank you. I was thinking about that too. I was like, if you ever had any questions, now would be the time. But yeah, and I just remember being kind of starstruck in that moment, going like, okay, don't say anything stupid. Like, think about the lamp. What lamp are we talking about? Yeah, and thankfully, like the people that were with me, my team is amazing. Like I love Artisan Space. They're a great way for, at least for, you know, they take a chance on new blood, and it's just so nice to see.
Now, Eva has another question. She said, beautiful alpaca. One more question. Did you block the sweater? I think she's talking about the sweater you're wearing, but that's not alpaca. Was one of them alpaca?
The green is alpaca.
Okay.
Yes.
So she's asking, did you block the sweater?
I did.
Did.
Yes.
Yeah.
In order to get the stitches really clean, like you need blocking to kind of get everything to relax and to make it even. So I did a light blocking on it. I didn't want to like move it too much because I'm always afraid of alpaca like plying and kind of felting on me. So I dunked it in some water with some wool wash, and then I let it kind of set it flat in the dimensions that I wanted, because I figured as I wore it, it would kind of stretch on me too. And that was my blocking process with it. I didn't use any steam. I didn't use any heat, mostly because I was afraid of the alpaca.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turned out really, really pretty. So next year, you know how, did you go to the student fashion show? I know you went to the pajama party because I heard everybody said you could really sing and dance, you know. Did you go to the student fashion show?
I did.
Next year,
yes.
did you model that sweater? I don't remember you modeling it. Next year you should model that sweater. You know, and bring all your sweaters and model them. The student fashion show is so fun. I love seeing everybody's work up there. It's just, that's the best of the whole Stitches experience to me, except for I hear the pajama party was very fun. So
yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so now, what are your current and future projects? What do you have going on in your head?
What do I have going on in my head? There's well, this book based on the Japanese patterns and sashiko is kind of floating in my head right now. I have this kind of jacket using a similar, like this and some similar patterns. I was thinking of making that on the edges of the cardigan, and then having like the collar like a certain color. And so that one's something that's floating a lot in my head. And there's also this, so the designer, or fashion designer, is Zach Posen. He closed his fashion house recently, and part of his 2019 resort collection was this beautiful like sweater, and it almost looked like armor. So what I noticed when I was looking closely on it is that the knitting was horizontal across the band here along the shoulder, and then it was picked up in a circular, like the edges were picked up and turned into like this mini circular yoke, and then you go down and you have these big poofy balloon sleeves. And I saw that, I'm like, I need to make something like that. I need to play.
Now, who is it? One of the people in my group drew out a picture similar to that. It was, I don't remember who it was, that had something going around and picking up stitches. It is challenging, but it's very fun and it's very doable. Yep.
Yeah.
It's thinking way outside the box, which is really, really fun.
Yeah.
So, Evelyn's on here. She says, a true artist, I didn't notice the guitar in the back, and of course that lovely sweater. So yes,
thank you.
He is an artist. He sings, he dances, he plays musical instruments, and he sings in a choir. What's the name of the choir you're in?
It's the Hollywood Master Chorale. I'm actually, after this interview, I'm running over to sing in it. So
we probably need to get off here real soon because I told him I'd only keep him for an hour. So do you have anything else you would like to say? And does anyone else have any questions they would like to ask Kneil before we let him go? So
I mean,
where you can,
I feel like
Kneil, I'm going to put it up here. Let's see. Hold on. I want to erase this one. This is, did it show up? Let's make it bigger. I may have made it too little. It's not. It'll be down in the description below the video after you watch this when it's over. All the ways to contact and get onto his blog, his YouTube page, his Facebook page. He has a website. He's branding himself. He's doing a very, very good job. I love the main picture that he has with all the yarn behind him.
Yes.
I hope that you all support Kneil in his endeavors. I think he is a shining star, and I'm going to let him go because he needs to go sing. And then we'll talk a little bit, once he's gone, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I have coming up with the tutorials that we're going to do next, okay? So thank you so much, Kneil. I'm very happy that you agreed to be on here with me, and I hope the rest of your day is wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It's good seeing you. I hope to hear from you soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. So, we just finished the pillow tutorial. Here's my pillow. Is it right side up or upside down? That looks right side up. Here's the other side. And this actually was a really good prelude to what we're going to do next, which is the bottom-up sweater knit in pieces. And it's going to be drop shoulder or modified drop shoulder. But for people that want to do cables, you don't have to do cables. You can do any stitch pattern you want. But if you want to do cables and do some embroidery on them, this is a good opportunity to try that. So that's going to start in January. I still have to finish writing it up, and Francois is going to translate it into French for me again. And it will go on sale in January. I don't have a specific date yet, but probably around the middle of January. And the first day it will be half price. It'll be $25, just like all the other sweater tutorials. First day it'll be $12.50 for 24 hours only, and then it'll be $25 after that. And that's all. So I hope you enjoyed seeing Kneil on here. It was really super fun for me to meet him. I knew I wanted to have him as a guest on my live stream immediately. I hope you support him. Go to his webpage and learn more about him and support him in his future endeavors. And we'll be back here next week. Now, next week, I have another special guest. I have Janine Bages, and she does Fair Isle. She's the one that did the book. It's in here somewhere. Of course, it's not popping out. But it's called The Joy of Color. And she's going to be on here. I'll have her interview live next week. Then, after Christmas, I'm going to have Beth Brown Renzel on January 4th. And later on in that month, I'm going to have Ann Budd and Alistair Post Quinn. and I have a few other people lined up, but those I have specific dates for already. So we are on a roll. We're going to get, we're going to have some really good people on here. Plus, we'll be talking a lot about the sweater tutorial that we're doing. So Lori Jane said, what about the Afghan on the sofa? Yes, he knitted that too. He's a very talented young man, and he's been knitting, what did he say? He'd been knitting for about 8 years, but for as young as he is, that's a long time. So anyway, happy knitting. We'll see you next time. Be sure to give me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and share with your friends. So we'll see you next time. Take care.